and welcome back to our one wild and precious lives and our dogs, and today also our cats. Because today we have a special guest on the show, and it's Valerie Russell. She is the first guest who is a cat person who currently does not have any dogs, which is, well, a little bit out of the ordinary, probably for our audience, which I'm sure consists of lots of dog people. I know, Peter, you have cats.
We love cats.
We
love cats. We have a talk with my dog every day about how we love cats and how they're part of the family. So, and it's part of the getting to a special place, a peaceful place.
Yeah, it's a journey.
A journey.
Valerie, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit? And of course, your cats.
I sure will. I proudly wear my cat lady badge. It's one of the first things people know about me. It's such an integral part of my life. But I am Valerie, the owner of Due South Travels, which is a tour and transportation agency located in Antigua, Guatemala. I've been here for a little over 5 years now. And I have one cat named Mo, and he's a very large and in charge all black cat that I brought from New York with me. He's 11, and my other cat was adopted here about 2.5 years ago, and her name is Lulu, and she loves her older brother.
Oh, did they get along right from the start? Is that just out of curiosity? Is that easy with cats, or do you have to be careful when introducing a new one?
Yeah. It's really not easy with cats. There's like a very strict pecking order with cats. You know, Mo is always the alpha, and I had another male cat that was also the alpha, so they didn't get along. When my other cat passed about 3 years ago, I brought him here as well. I took about 6 months to give Mo some space, and then I decided I was ready, adopted Lulu, and within a few days, he really just took her under his wing. There's a special way to introduce cats, you know, when you bring a new one into the house, but now, I mean, she just runs to him all the time and he grooms her. And that's sort of cat language for like, you're part of my family.
That sounds nice.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Due South Travels. And in a way, well, not directly, but indirectly, that's how we met, because you do a lot of things in Antigua. And many people in Antigua know you. For example, you run the Girlfriends in Antigua group. So I think you got to Guatemala about 5 years ago. And so did I, more or less, I think. So it must have been around the same time. When I was looking around about how to meet people, I found that group. You were running this, I don't know if it was a regular thing, but there was a meeting for that group and I attended, and that's how we met in person for the first time, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So I had come here in July of 2017, and I spent my first 6 months traveling around Guatemala to get to know it pretty well so that I could start my business and have more knowledge and success. But what I realized is that there was a group of people in Antigua who had moved here for various reasons, whether they came because their partner was Guatemalan, or they came to work on a project, or they were just traveling through and loved it and decided to stay. And all of these people had something in common with me. And it's that they were sort of starting a new life and they really wanted to be in Guatemala. But I am someone who has maintained the same friendships since I was in kindergarten, you know, and I have a lot of really amazing friends, and moving here and not having my friends nearby was very difficult for me. And I said, there have to be other women in my position who are just looking for those female friendships. You know, it's hard. Sure, we can go on dating apps and maybe find a partner or date around, but to actually find other people with similar interests when you're looking for non-romantic relationships can be a little hard, a little intimidating too, you know? So I started the group in order just to make female friends, and it's really taken off now. It's been in existence for 4 years. We did some social meetups, and that's how I made a lot of my really great friends. And now there's 4,500 women in the group. People do post events and social activities that are open for all, but we also turn to each other for advice or recommendations or support, those types of things.
Yeah, I love it. It's a great group, and it was an amazing idea, and really interesting that nobody had thought of doing that before.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, there's the expats group on Facebook for those of us who are transplants to Guatemala. But unfortunately, as we see in so many other forums, sometimes people are a little kind of like mean when they're behind their keyboard.
Yeah, like it's that social media phenomenon, right? Where you're hiding behind an avatar and you can just be a jerk.
Right. Yeah. And so kindness is one of like the built-in sort of mandatory requirements for being a member of the Girlfriends at Antigua group. You know, there's going to be people who ask questions that maybe you think are silly, or maybe they're worded in a way that you might find insulting or something. And so we're there to teach people, oh, it would be better to word it this way, or I understand what you're trying to say, and here's how we can help you with the question you've presented and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's pretty awesome.
Can I just say about the Girls in Antigua group, because it's so successful that the guys know about it, you know? One of the great things is being an alcoholic and being a person who does not like alcohol anymore. If you're coming to a new town, often the only place or one of the only places is to go to a bar, to go to drink alcohol, to meet other people. And I don't think anymore that that's a great way to meet anybody. And I think that to be able to talk to people first without even meeting, and then to meet in an environment like the Girls of Antigua group, I think it's an excellent thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that a lot of people have found support and have found friendships through the group. And I do see that a lot of the expats, specifically the men, it's hard for them to find meaningful, deep friendships. You know, and most of the time that is found at a bar late at night. But I'm not a person who goes out to drink often. I have to get up early in the mornings and stuff. So that's not been a part of my life for many years. And it was really important to me to establish these friendships. And it's something that I hope other women have really found a lot of value in also.
It's proven to be with the numbers. You see the numbers as proof.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll have to, I bet Elvira, Peter's girlfriend, I bet she knows about it and she's probably in it too.
Totally. I wouldn't be surprised if she was.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the other day by now have zero sense of time. So I'm just calling everything the other day. The other day, and it may actually have been 3 years ago, I read this beautiful piece of writing that Valerie put out there about her Guateversary. If you live in Guatemala for a while, you have the 1 year Guateversary and the 2 year Guateversary. You kind of celebrate the time that you've been to this place if you really love it. I just it really resonated with me on several levels. Would you mind reading that piece of writing to us?
Yeah, absolutely. July 10th, I celebrated my 5-year Guateversary. So I posted on Facebook with a photo just to celebrate. I'm not one that's big on birthdays or holidays, but this is actually a really big day for me. So I wrote, today is my 5-year Guateversary, as we immigrants call it. This day is so much more significant to me than any holiday or birthday for so many reasons. Leaving the States to reinvent myself was a huge step for me, a scary one, but one that I felt necessary. In 2014, I had serious depression and a PTSD diagnosis and felt so lost and hopeless. I remember sitting at home saying, if I died tomorrow, what is the one thing I would regret the most? And my answer was, I want to live abroad again. But how to turn that into a lifestyle or a career? That was my biggest question. You know, I'm not someone who really flies by the seat of my pants. I'm very logical and planned. It took a few years of planning and healing, but on July 10th, 2017, I set off on this adventure. I boarded the plane to come here without knowing a single soul, without having stepped foot in Guatemala previously, and I had the full intention of making this place my home and starting my own business. And wow, has it fulfilled my expectations and then some. Over the last 5 years, I've learned so much about Guatemala and fallen in love with it over and over again. I've had lots of frustrations too. It's not all roses and butterflies, but those were expected and are part of the learning process and a natural part of the adjustment to life in a very different place than where I came from. More importantly, over the last 5 years, I've learned so much about myself. I've built a business from literally zero, and it now supports me. I built friendships that I really don't know how I lived without before I met these incredible people. My creativity has flourished. My long-term friendships that survived the distance have even grown stronger. I've delved deep into parts of me and found the power to let go of unfulfilling and unhealthy relationships, and my business survived COVID. So I'm here to tell you, I hope you'll celebrate with me today and again in another 5 years and so on. Also, I hope if you're thinking about making a change or starting over, that you can do it and you should.
Lovely.
I just really love that so much. Well, let's take this as a starting off point for our conversation today. We'll just see where this journey takes us.
Yeah.
What was your first Guatemala? You know, was it in the travel agent? Was it a friend who told you, or?
No, actually, so when I was growing up, I was very studious, a little dorky, but I loved reading books that were like mysteries, like, I don't know if you guys in your respective countries ever had the Goosebumps series.
Yeah, well, that's the
Little
girl.
mysteries, little scary books. Anyway, and then as I was like 12, 13, this whole world of forensics was coming out, right? And I was super, super interested in it. And so I received a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and a master's degree in forensic anthropology from a university in England. And then I came back to New York and I started working on the World Trade Center Human Recovery Project, sifting for human remains. Then I went to investigate child abuse and I was based up in Harlem for a few years doing that. After that, I got laid off, and this was during the recession, so 2009. So I took a few months and I backpacked through South America and just really fell in love with the places I saw, the culture, the lifestyle. And that was sort of like, I want to make a life here, but realistically in the United States, and maybe where you two are from, we're really highly encouraged to sort of follow this path and don't stray from the path. You get a university, you get your degree, you get your job, you maybe find a partner, you get promotions, you buy a house, you get married, you have kids. And anyone who doesn't want those things or who is off that path gets questioned. What do you mean? What do you mean you're going to take time off from work? How are you going to support yourself? What about health insurance? How are you going to live? And so it's not often, especially in the United States, that people are encouraged to do a gap year or to do something that strays from that plan. So I went to work like everybody else. When I came back from South America, I got a job working in a correctional facility. So I was a corrections officer for a few years. After that, I was a narcotics investigator. And due to my experiences at those two places that we can get into in a bit, I just decided I wanted to pursue something else. But how do you do that when your skills are very, like I was just sort of a head in a government facility. So I did not have the entrepreneurial skills that I thought you would definitely need in order to succeed outside of what I had planned for. And I chose Guatemala because I wanted to be close to home. I have parents that are getting older. I have wonderful nieces and nephews that I love so much that I wanted to still be close to. So I focused on Central America and I started to do research based on tourism statistics, based on expat population, based on cost of living.
Did you already know that you wanted to start a travel agency or something along those lines?
Yeah, actually, essentially, I really wanted to start like a beautiful Airbnb, but that takes a lot of capital. And I wasn't sure I would have that much money, Right. So with a travel agency, you really don't need a lot of overhead. In fact, I had an intern do my website for free. I just researched what it would take to start a business down here, little things like that. So I was calculated and I did a lot of logistical planning. And when I arrived, I said, my first 6 months, I'm going to travel. And I did work away. And I was like the receptionist in a hotel for a month in Lanquin or smoked champagne. And I lived in Flores for a month and went to Tikal and explored everything. And then I did the backpacker trail through Belize down, took the boat from Belize back into Livingston to Rio Dulce. So I did everything that my potential future clients might also do. So I knew how to tell them what to expect. Right. So for me, it was really important to do all these things. And still, when I meet people who are Guatemalan, they're like, oh, you've been to more places in Guatemala than I have, but it allows me to really give proper knowledge and awareness of what to expect for my clients who book tours with me. So I originally thought by looking at photos, because I had never been in Guatemala, I talked to a few friends who had visited and said, I think you'd really love it there. Started researching, started reading while I was working, in New York. And I was like, wow, look at Lake Atitlan. And I was like, I want to be there. I just want to live there. And I remember my first day, I get in the lancha and I'm like, I'm finally here. It's like all my Googling has come to life. I was so excited about it. But I think as a place to base myself, because of the logistics of getting around the lake, it was a little too small for me, a little too quiet for me. At the end of the day, I'm, in my 30s, a single woman. I wanted a little more life and a little more ease of access to the things that I really enjoy. So I chose to settle in Antigua. I'm happy with that decision. I really love it here. And, now I'm in a great place that's a home base for most tourists also.
Yes. I think that's the perfect place for what you do for a living. Really.
Yeah.
Like in Guatemala, that is the place to be.
Yeah.
And there are other tour agencies, but I think what you offer is unique and people know it.
Yeah. And I think that because I'm a foreigner, people, maybe they're hesitant that their local tour operators might not speak English properly, which is not true. But, someone who might be coming from abroad, maybe they're worried about language barriers. And maybe they are interested in the insight that I'd have to share about what it's like here in Guatemala, because I'm very honest with people about things,
Yeah.
I don't try to just paint this rosy picture of everything. And when someone books a tour with me, I send them my written essential guide to Guatemala, which has information about like tipping and Wi-Fi and using your phone and banking and, things to look out for in terms of avoiding foodborne illness and stuff like that. So I just try to be real with people.
Yeah. And I think you also offer relocation services for people who want to move there, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because there are so many questions, just little things that people don't know about, and they don't even know how to ask that. I have a lot of people who come and they say, oh, I would like to live over here. Okay, well, do you plan on buying a car? Do you know what the traffic rules are? What the consequences are if you have an accident? Are you comfortable taking a public bus or calling an Uber? Do you speak Spanish? Would you want to walk home at night? There's so many factors that go into it.
Yeah, and people don't know what questions to even ask.
Right.
And you help them not only find the answers, but also the questions they have.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sort of a little hand holding, but we all need that sometimes, no matter how confident you are about moving to a foreign country.
So Valerie, so you made the big jump and you were successful. Actually, you were highly successful at it. But what prompted you to actually put those plans into practice, to actually make the move or start planning while you were still in New York and working at the correctional facility, or were you working at that time?
Yeah, so I was at the correctional facility until 2014. And then I was working for a state agency, and we were tasked with investigating narcotics, but mostly prescription drug diversion. So we have a very big opioid epidemic, but a lot of substance abuse issues with regards to prescription narcotics. And so that was my field of interest. So I wasn't a uniformed police officer in a police car making stops, none of that. I was strictly an investigator. A lot of our subjects were doctors.
Out of curiosity, because I have no idea how that would work, would you pretend to be a patient trying to get opioids, or?
No, there wasn't any undercover work on our part, but we were investigating doctors who were prescribing outside of, typical treatment.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. While I was in the correctional facility, I was one of 150 officers, and there were only 12 females, and I was pretty much the only one on my shift for the majority of the time. And I just had a lot of difficulty with the men that I worked with there.
Not with the inmates, but with your colleagues.
Correct. Yeah. No, the inmates and we would just build a rapport of respect. But with my colleagues, it was just a really difficult situation. And I was sexually harassed by them, and it created a really deep depression in me. And I was diagnosed with PTSD. So I ended up filing a lawsuit against the jail, and because the sheriff is an elected official and there were some salacious details, it became highly publicized. It was in the newspaper. It was very embarrassing for me. And after the lawsuit was settled, I had already been in Guatemala at that point. So it was just a way to step out of that and restart my life. But that experience really is what made me, so I left and went to narcotics, took a huge pay cut. Because of that, I was like, oh my God, I'm in my early 30s. I'm struggling financially again. I'm not happy. I still feel very disillusioned. There were still little things that would come up in narcotics that made me feel insecure about being in that environment and that job. I was still very cautious about my mental health treatment, because as a law enforcement officer, you are pretty much looked down upon if you say that you have any mental health issues.
Oh.
Yeah. For liability reasons, they don't want you to have a gun.
Oh, so is that, does that mean you're not quote unquote allowed to have mental health issues? You have to just keep them a secret? Or
yeah, I mean, no law enforcement agency is going to say you're not allowed to work here if you have mental health issues, right?
Yeah.
But it's something that's sort of known that if you come forward and say I have depression, like I had, that they will think you're a liability.
And then they will,
even in the military and stuff, you know, there's not great treatment out there and support. I'm speaking generally. Of course, there are surely some agencies that have really done right by their personnel in terms of this. But for me, no, it was not something I spoke about. It was not something that I really even admitted to my family and friends at the time when I was going through it. I was referred to a therapist through my county's Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, because that's who managed my complaint. And she really, really helped me greatly. So I met with her and went to her for 3 years. And it wasn't until I finally made the decision. I was very unhappy as a narcotics investigator. I finally made the decision to leave. And that week, as I was searching for another opportunity, is when I finally went on medication. And that saved my life. Absolutely. I had very deep, serious suicidal thoughts for 3 years that I didn't tell anyone about. But the decision to leave law enforcement and to finally seek treatment and medication is something that saved my life. And prior to that, I had tried exercise and diet and yoga and meditation and anything I could possibly think of that anyone would suggest as an alternative. Because I was scared of being stereotyped or, you know, sort of blacklisted from law enforcement if I were to have to fill out an application that says, yes, I'm taking an antidepressant.
Oh, you have to fill out and you have to disclose that information?
If you are already employed at the job and you just started medication, no. But if you are going for another law enforcement job, you have to disclose if you've had any mental health treatment, stuff like that on your background check. And so I was actively pursuing other options such as the FBI and the ATF and stuff like that. And so, you know, you had to disclose it. And unfortunately, it just is not something that people really want to accept for a new applicant.
Wow. I mean, that must have been really hard. If you're surrounded by people who tell you that you cannot have, you just must not have mental health issues and you can't seek treatment. I mean, at some point, I assume you'd internalize that too, to some degree, right?
Yeah, no one's going to tell you you can't seek treatment.
Okay.
They're going to tell you to seek treatment, but you know, if it becomes known and they think that for some reason you are unable to do your job well because of that, then, you know, maybe you're put on leave or something. You know, these are all unionized jobs, so you do have advocates in your union that are there to help you, but ultimately I think that the general consensus is you don't talk about it.
It turns it into a don't ask, don't tell thing, where people just push it under the carpet, and anything that's pushed under the carpet doesn't get better.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I was dealing with people who, I don't want to come off as sounding like bitter or whatever, but you know,
you're not a bitter person, and that's very obvious. Don't worry.
A lot of them were like a little ignorant about these issues. And, you know, if I received some sort of a commendation at work, it was because I was a female, you know? And so although, well educated more so than a lot of the other people I worked with, it's still nope, it's because you're a woman. You got this only because you're a woman. But then also I received like the mistreatment only because I was a woman, you know. So yeah, it was a really difficult thing to balance, and I always thought I was like super laid back and could joke and hang with the guys, but it's something that really affected me like so deeply that created this whole new life for myself because of it.
Wow. Were you aware that, so when people told you, oh, you only get promoted, for example, because you're a woman, were you aware that that was a lie and that you had earned it? Or was that messaging so strong that you yourself felt it?
No, absolutely. But unfortunately in the correctional system specifically, so I worked for the county corrections department, which we manage like the county jail, right? So that's everybody who gets arrested. It's not like a state prison, people who are already sentenced, or federal prison, people who have committed federal crimes and are sentenced. And so there are specific rules regarding like posts that female officers can hold in the jails, And these are all regulated by the state, the New York State Board of Commission of Corrections. So of course there was certain things that I had to do that male officers couldn't, or if there was a female inmate who needed extra attention, if I would apply for that overtime and get it, it was because I was a female, because you had to watch females one-on-one, although I worked with the general population normally. So there were certain things that, yes, were dependent on me being a female, but in general, I worked really hard to get where I got. I was well respected. I did a good job. And the situation that I was put in was just something that I never expected to happen.
Yeah.
Honestly. Yeah.
Yeah. Peter, can you relate to some of these experiences, or in general, did you experience dealing with difficulties in your life just very differently because you're a guy? And did that frame things very differently for you?
Well, firstly, just sort of a history of where I learned about mental health. My uncle was very mentally sick. He had paranoid, manic depressive schizophrenia. He was hospitalized, and we would go and see him, once a month on a Monday evening. So we would go to, a psychiatric hospital and visit. So we were aware from an early age that sickness can be invisible. Sickness can be in your head, and it can make you sick and put you in hospital. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I think that was an important thing for me and for our family growing up, that I was aware of mental health as an illness, and it doesn't make it any maybe easier dealing with it. And I wouldn't put myself as having serious mental health problems, but through drinking alcohol for 20 years, it stunts your emotional development. But whenever I first heard during an AA meeting that you can almost, your emotional age is whatever age you were when you stopped drinking or started drinking, and that's your emotional age, and that totally hit with me. I'm like, oh my God, that I do feel like I'm in my 20s emotionally sometimes. But it was sort of bringing it back to the dogs. Whenever I stopped drinking after my stroke, I just threw everything into Leo. 8 o'clock in the morning, we would walk to Antigua from Hocotenango and just hang out in the park and go to the different parks. And before you would know it, 5 hours is gone, and that was every day. And he would introduce me to all these children in the park and all the tourists, because everybody wanted to say hello to Leo. And it was just such an important relationship for me, because I came into sober Pete, after drinky Pete was gone. And it's two very different experiences, very different life experiences. And Leo was that connection between the two that made a really special. He was with me during the last 2 years of my drinking, which was not the best 2 years of my life. And then he came into, from the start of my new life. And that's why I miss the boy so much. But he, just to bring it back to the mental health thing, just that time of the day where you can be alone, like you were saying, Valerie, and talk to the dog, just like you would talk to yourself, and figure things out, by talking. I'm not a hugely religious person, but I find praying to be a very good thing to organize your head. What do you want? What you're thankful for? Who's important to you? I feel like praying is almost like a little spring, a little dusting for your brain, to sort of cleans up your brain a wee bit before in the morning, what you want to do for the day, and at the end of the day, how the day went. And I started doing that after my stroke as well, because I think I have to believe in the power of prayer, because there was some heavy praying done for me throughout Ireland when I was having my operations. And what I learned from Leo and sort of how he helped me, I can use now with my other dogs. I think the sort of, me and Cleo don't have the same connection, even that me and Anna do. But I learned from Leo that you have to invest in the dog. You have to spend time. I can't expect Cleo to be Leo, because we haven't shared the year's experience. I haven't taken him to the lake every day, and so I know that I need to do that, and I am doing it. and Cleo is responding. And, you know, so it's almost like Leo's still with me, because I can see him in the sort of training. I mean, it is a cliche, but I've said it before. Leo taught me about dogs. I never taught. It didn't seem to me that I taught him anything. I think maybe sit. But after that, you know, everything else was just, yes, that was a good thing you did. Well done. And then he would do it again. It's a different relationship with the Inanna, a small dog, similar to a cat, I think, because it's almost like a baby thing. You know, there's definitely a paternal thing when you're, you know, my little baby is, I don't have children either, you know, and it's a lovely little relationship we're developing at the minute. And maybe Cleo's getting jealous, and that's maybe why they were fighting this week. So we'll have to all just calm down.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's also, you know, no matter how down you feel or how, you know, bad your day is going, you still have to keep that routine for your pets, whether it's dogs or cats. You know, my cats, they start to let me know at 4:30 they're ready for dinner, but dinner's at 6:30 every night, you know, but I can't sleep through it. I can't ignore their needs. And so when you formed that new routine with Leo of going to the park every day, it sort of helped catapult you into this sort of different lifestyle that you were starting.
It filled the time that my brain would be thinking, let's drink, you know, because if I was sitting at home, or if I was, you know, in the sort of environment that I had been in before, the alcohol is it's just going to be spinning around your head. But you take the dog out for the walk, you're getting the healthy exercise, your, you know, circulation, and then you're meeting people as well. I mean, it was just a real triple good thing, that taking your mind onto in a healthy place, you know, habit forming, as you're sort of saying, it's all about habits. And if you create a good one, they take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Was Leo your first dog?
My first dog, that's the other thing. In fact, I was not really a family of no pets. We didn't even have a fish in our house. My mum from a farming background. So lots of animals down in her side of the country. But because we lived in the city, there was no animals in our house. So my first dog was whenever I was 37. It was when I was introduced to Leo. And it was, well, they say it was love at first sight. The sort of sad thing was, because I don't remember those first 18 months. I was super drinking. I find it hard to remember, like, meeting Leo for the first time. I don't really remember the first day, which is sort of sad. But you know how my life had changed, because when he came into my life, I didn't even remember it, you know. And by the time, it was only 7 years that we lived, we were in a different part of the country, and we started our business, and just in a totally different place. And I'm sure he's looking after me as we speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing, and I don't know about from a mental health point of view, I mean, actually last night was one of the first times that I went over there and had a look at his picture on the fridge, because I avoid photographs of Leo. I don't even really like that Elvira has put out 2 photographs. I won't look at them. And I don't know if that's healthy or not, but, you know, as I said to one of my friends, Anando, God rest him, just passed, and he was a big Buddhist guy. I said, it makes me sad whenever I think of him. And he says, well, don't think of him.
Yeah.
Is it as simple as that? Is that a good thing? And I think with dogs, it's a good thing, because they're not people. You know, you don't want to forget people. You know what I mean? Your friends, your family. But I don't know. It's a funny one. It's with my first dog. You know, I don't know how it's going to go with other dogs. You know, how was your first dog dying? How did that go for you? You know?
Oh, we got our first dog when I was 7. We've always been a family of pets. So I've had cats forever. My mom's a dog groomer, so I was always around dogs. We got our first dog when I was 7. When I was 21, my mom and dad called me, and I was at university a few hours away, and they said, it's time and we have to put Willie down this weekend. So I came home and I slept on the floor with him. He was diagnosed with stomach cancer, and it was the day I got there, he could no longer stand up. So we were going to do it the next day, and I slept on the floor with him. It was the most devastated I've ever felt in my entire life. And the only way that I could find comfort through that situation was knowing that we had given him such a fantastic life. I mean, he was in our school play when I was in middle school. We did a rendition of Annie, Orphan Annie, and he was the dog Sandy. He was a long-haired bearded collie. And so all my friends loved him and everybody knew him, and he was on stage with us, and it was just such a wonderful like set of memories for so long. And you know, we feel devastated, but really we're just here for them, but they do so much for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you decide to not think about him anymore after he passed, or did you consciously keep him with you?
That's another question. Did you get another dog quickly?
It wasn't quickly. No, at that point I was out of the house. My sister was out of the house, and my elderly grandfather had moved in, and he was a lot of work for the family. So we waited until my grandfather passed, and then my sister and I gifted my mom a new bearded collie puppy a few years later. So we made like a big photo frame filled with pictures of the dog for my mom, and it was like, oh, he was just so cute. We think of him all the time. We're like, our second dog, nothing like the first dog.
You basically took the opposite approach that Peter took.
We like memorialized him in this
in
this photo frame. There's like 100 pictures of him.
I don't think there's a right answer. Like there is no right way or wrong way to.
Oh, I mean, it was so painful for all of us. Maybe it would have been easier to not have to think about it. And, you know, everybody copes differently with emotional situations. So there's no right or wrong.
I'm curious. So, Peter, when you looked at Leo's picture at the fridge last night, what did that feel like?
It felt weird.
Yeah.
And I could almost smell him. And seeing little parts of him, because I knew him so well, you know, as we know our dogs, like, but he was my best buddy that I would never leave the house without him. You know, I wouldn't consider leaving the house without him. It made me feel sad. And it's a selfish thing as well, because it was a Peter and Leo thing. We had a joint personality almost, you know, whenever I went out, especially in Panachel, it was just more people still call me Leo. You know, it was very, whenever, you know, after, as you say, after I stopped drinking, that those 4 or 5 hours, nearly the majority of the sort of daylight hours was spent interacting with him and with other people. And I just felt sad for the loss of Peter and Leo. You know what I mean? It's now just Peter, but it's Peter and Anna. But yeah, it also made me feel lucky. I mean, I have to say that I don't think I'll ever have another dog like Leo, but I'm so lucky to have had a dog like Leo. And just like you said, Valerie, I know that he had a dream life. You know, both of us worked from home. We lived at the lake before we lived in Antigua. You know, he was getting walked, you know, he was getting 4 hours a day minimum, and with birds as well. And then he came to the lake and was off the lead, and he hadn't been off the lead in, you know, for 5 years. So he was running around the lake with me. He was just time of his life. So he had good fun, you know. But that was it was funny how I could nearly smell him. Just this real, I could have painted his smell. If that doesn't sound weird, but
no.
And then it made me feel I still feel a little guilty about Cleo, because we got her very, very soon after, just immediately, basically. And it was a little knee-jerk reaction. And it's not fair on Cleo, if you know what I mean. But in saying that, where she was coming from, she'd been moved from house to house, she had been fostered. So she's in a permanent place now, and she's loving life out there and in here as well. But it made me feel sad and then sort of happy that we had that time. It was definitely, because if it wasn't for Leo, I certainly wouldn't be speaking to you today, because that's how I met you, Chrissi. But I wouldn't have the sort of knowledge of what pets can do for you. You know what I mean? I think it's a little bit similar. Go back to the praying thing. Praying works for the person who is praying. You know what I mean? It helps the person, whether or not there's anything, you know, sort of out there. Just the action of praying, I think, helps the prayer. And having a dog helps someone who needs it. I always thought, actually, it's funny. Not that I looked down on it, but I did sort of think, years ago, people who had dogs were missing something, you know, and sort of like, oh, they need a dog. I don't need a dog type of thing. And then I sort of learned that I was missing something, you know, and that's why people have dogs and cats, because they add, you know, we evolved with dogs and cats, so they are part of our consciousness, you know what I mean? We evolved with these animals, they're part of us, you know, and sort of connecting with that, I think was very special through Leo, and I'll never forget him because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's allowed to stay special forever. It's okay if he stays the only dog you will ever have that kind of connection with.
Well, that's it. I mean, it's funny, whenever I talked with Leo about this, you know, and I wouldn't have another dog, and or I wouldn't have another relationship, blah blah blah. And it's funny looking back at those conversations. I mean, we had a running joke that, you know, Leo will never die. He will never die. And it was just, you know, I shouldn't have had a running joke like that.
It's just something that you just can't think about.
We just can't think about it. That was the joke. That was the joke, because Elvira was sort of seeing this relationship develop, and she was nearly worried, not worried, but she had to tell me, you know, that this dog is going to die one day. And I was like, this dog will never die. You know, that was where it sort of started.
Yeah.
It was a love affair, and happy to have it.
Yeah.
And it was glad that he got to meet Anna as well. They were friendly.
Yeah.
They would never had an argument. And it was funny to see her running in between his legs, like, you know, just being that much smaller. But this one will teach me how to be patient as well. We're going to learn how to love cats. And make peace, because I coming from Northern Ireland, I learned that, you know, peace and reconciliation it's the only way forward.
Nice. I was just in Northern Ireland because all my family's from there, and I carry an Irish passport, and so I wanted to go and learn a little bit more about my heritage. Yeah.
Where were you?
I stayed in Belfast, but my family is originally from Coleraine. And then I have a really good friend from grad school that works for the police service there. And so she took me for the whole day on the Giant's Causeway tour. And
my sister went to university in Coleraine. We're in Portrush, which is just beside beautiful up the north coast. Cold, but beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very good. I look forward to getting back soon. I haven't been back since 2017, so it's 5 years now.
Oh, wow.
But Corona sort of put a big stop on things, but I'll be looking forward to getting back.
Yeah. I got my Irish passport. I finally applied for it when Trump got into office.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I was like, oh man.
That's a good reason.
Yeah. And I thought it would be really helpful also if I wanted to live abroad. I didn't know if I would want to be in Europe or, you know, so it's helpful here, you know, when I have to do a visa run, because I can go to the South and then I come back in with my other passport after my 90 days or 100.
Yeah. My US passport, I'm just looking at the date, is just expired 2 months ago, and I don't think I'll be able to get a new one.
Because you're no longer married to an American citizen, or?
Well, no, because you will be able to keep the. It's because, and you can cut this out. It's because I have warrants for my arrest in California, and I don't know if they're going. I'm not going to go through the hassle of renewing a US passport when I have warrants.
Right. Yeah.
Because I don't really need one.
I mean, I don't know. Valerie can probably tell you if there would be a hassle or not.
Would that be a hassle on violation of probation on misdemeanor DUIs?
I highly doubt it. So applying for a new passport, there might be a way that they put a stop on that until you solve your legal issues. But at the end of the day, you're already you're already abroad and you already have a passport, so it would just be a renewal. So I don't think when they're renewing it that they're doing any sort of background checks at the same time. It would have to be if your passport's already flagged.
Yeah, that's a friend of mine, Brendan Byrne, who you might have heard of by reputation. He said that you can renew your passport no problem with warrants. He says, I've got warrants in many different states, and I've had my passport renewed many times. But again, I don't think I'm going to go through the expense of getting a US passport. I've got I've got a British one and an Irish one, and that's enough.
Yeah, and you can always renew it down the line in 20
That's
years.
it. Yeah, exactly.
Citizenship
Citizenship is citizenship. That's one thing that Drunky Pete did that was not too bad, was manage to get US citizenship. How Drinky Pete did that, I'll never know.
Well, it doesn't hurt to have it.
Doesn't hurt to have it.
Exactly. It opens doors.
Yeah. If I manage to get Guatemalan citizenship, that will be 4 passports, and not a lot of people have 4.
That's a lot. Yeah, that would be a lot.
And I think there's a certain limit as to how many you can have, depending on which ones you already hold.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'll have to have a word with the Secret Service and see what the spies do.
Yeah.
Why don't I so I guess if you and Elvira got married, in theory you could apply for a Guatemalan.
We could do the Guatemalan one.
Yeah. And I mean, the worst thing that could happen is that you would say, okay, I revoke this other one, right? Or I go with.
Oh yeah, that's it's only whenever you get the US one, it's the same thing. You revoke your UK one, but only verbally. There's no.
They don't actually take it away from you.
No, you don't have to. Germans have to do it. If you are,
I know.
You have to give up your pass, or not you. You're not German, but I found that one out that you can keep the US. Don't you just say I revoke my UK passport or citizenship, but the Queen's not listening, so it doesn't count.
Yeah, so for me, I had to wait until I was definitely not going to seek a federal law enforcement job in order to get my Irish passport.
Oh, is that right? You had to agree to that, put the right hand up and everything?
Yeah, well, because if you are applying for a federal job, they do very strict background checks. They want to know every single foreign affiliation you might have, including friends. And so someone who half of my Facebook friends list is people who are not from the United States because I've traveled, or I went to grad school abroad. You have to write down every single friendship you have and how you know them and how you're affiliated with them. And, have you ever given them money? And are they affiliated with any groups that might be of a national security concern? So I didn't even want to go through
Federal's different.
Yeah. So I didn't even want to go through it until I knew for sure that I was definitely leaving law enforcement permanently.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's crazy strict. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just thinking, I think yesterday I listened to a podcast Peter recommended to me, the Blind Boy podcast, and that I'm now addicted to.
He's brilliant.
Yeah, I didn't know it before. And on this episode I listened to, he said something that I write down somewhere. Oh yeah, here it is actually. So he said, the mental health difficulties and the sadness and barriers I experienced in the first part of my life weren't caused by me. They were caused by the structures and systems that I had to fit into. And then when I started to live my own life and pursue the current career that I have, there are no barriers. If something in my environment isn't working for me, I flexibly change to make it work for me. And the consequence of that is that 95% of the time, I'm a happy person with a decent sense of self-esteem, good mental health, and achieving what I would want to achieve in my life for a sense of personal meaning. And to be honest, that's kind of all I want. I don't have a strong desire to be really successful. I don't have a strong desire to be famous. What I want is, can I earn a living doing the things that I love every day? Can I do that? And if I can do that, then I enjoy being alive. The experience of existing is pleasurable.
That's it.
And I thought, wow, yeah, that is totally me. That describes me so much.
His stuff is brilliant.
When I was deciding, if I leave law enforcement, what do? I have a master's in forensics. How can I do something else? I said, I have to do something that I'm going to be equally as passionate about, and travel was number 2. So
yeah.
Right. Well, an interesting thing that Blind Boy said was that if you take in all the different types of neurodivergent conditions and lump them all together, it's 40% of the population are neurodivergent. So it can't be a fringe thing. It's not a.
No, it's not.
If 40% of the population, it is the thing that if you don't have it, your friend has it. Yes. And I think the world is getting better with recognizing these things, because if you can't recognize a problem, you can't solve it. And I think people are more comfortable talking about it. And the stigmatism, that Valerie, you're talking about, and it's the macho, thing, especially in that type of career, that, people in a macho environment, it's all from a space of fear. And fear is always coming from ignorance. And so people talking about these things more openly and just people being aware of them is a good thing, I think.
Yeah.
People are talking about it more. And we're talking about it. We're talking about it.
Well, and shortly after I left the United States, I was here, and it was November of 2017. And I got word that one of my ex-colleagues had committed suicide. And it's something that can be prevented. It can be treated, and we continuously have tragedies because people brush their problems away because of societal or cultural stigmatism or stereotypes that still exist. And here in Guatemala, the mental health system is so much different. Of course, there are people who seek out, counseling and whatnot. But if you look at the places where there's inpatient care, completely different standard than what we may see in our home countries. And also for men here, completely different when they need to or want to seek counseling or treatment of some sort, so there's so many different cultural elements that go into the mental health field.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed when I came here, and for me, medication was like a few months later, I just felt like $1 million. It was something that I didn't think was possible for me.
Yeah.
I was really in the depths of a horrendous depression. But what I see here is treatment is so different. Even the theories that people learn in school here when they're going into the mental health care field, because I have a friend here who works in counseling. She's from the United States, but her husband is Guatemalan. And she gave a lot of information about when she was sitting talking to him about their respective educational journeys and career paths and stuff, how different it was for the two of them and what they learned and what is still being taught here. But also mental health care for men here is not something that is accepted as widely as it is for, maybe women or children.
I wonder if that's still the case in general, actually.
It is in general, I think.
Yeah.
It's more pronounced here.
Yeah.
It's more pronounced here. It's more machismo culture here. There's no doubt about it. And the more machismo culture you have, the more toxic masculinity you have, you're getting problems in those areas, because it's the ignorance and fear, and I don't want to be vulnerable by saying these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these things, I think these things are changing in Guatemala as well, and they're changing here as fast as anywhere else. But change, is going to take time. It's not going to change in a year.
Yeah, maybe it also depends on on what stratum of society you come from. One of my housemates, for example, sees a counselor regularly. He's a guy, and he talks about it proudly.
Yeah.
But I think maybe it's a privilege to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
Depending on where you come from, and whether you come from a social stratum where this is socially acceptable or even desirable and economically possible.
It's not cheap to have a counselor. I missed the ones that were provided through my wife's health insurance in California. I had 4 counselors at one stage.
Yeah. But if you are lucky enough to have, good medical insurance plan in the United States, but I'm sure, as you realize, it's still very broken there. And
sure, the biggest healthcare provider is the county jails.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Mental health provider.
We had so many inmates come in who really, their series of crimes were committed maybe due to a substance abuse disorder, which, as we know, a lot of self-medication takes place through substance abuse when people are suffering from mental illness, but also, maybe they were stealing a little to feed their addiction, or maybe they had an undiagnosed mental illness or an untreated mental illness that caused them to commit petty crimes, and they were not getting any great treatment in the county jail. And there were people who would just come back year after year after year, arrested for the same petty crimes, that you never saw a change in them because they just were unable to access the resources that they were in dire need of.
Yeah, I have to say, when I lived in Austria does provide great health insurance in general. You can't even opt out of it. You have to have it. And I'm really grateful for the fact that I got to see a counselor for several years, psychotherapist, because she helped me so much. She helped me see so many things and helped me grow as a person that otherwise I would not have been able to afford that. There's no way. And I just paid nothing for it. And I had weekly meetings with her. So that's that feels like a huge privilege.
And it leads to a healthier society, and a healthier society is a more productive one, and a more productive society can pay for these things. So it's whatever the opposite of a vicious cycle is.
A virtuous cycle.
Virtuous cycle. There you go. Yeah. Why do we know the negative things better than the positive ones? Virtuous cycle. I've got to start one with Inanna. We're going to start virtuous cycles. Let's go. We're going to go and talk to the cat again. Mushy.
Family therapy with the cat and the dogs.
Family therapy with the cats and the dogs. And the spray bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll probably go have some family therapy with my dog now.
Very good. Are you heading out? Are you heading out anywhere? Yeah.
Yeah, today is my day off, so it's time to head out, be surrounded by green stuff, and have my dog run around.
Very good.
Yeah, recharge.
Energize.
Excellent.
Yeah, what about you, Val? What are your plans for today?
I am actually considered the expert on cats here amongst my friend group. And my best friend here, she is from outside of Seattle. She just got her little rescue kitty spayed yesterday. So I'm going to go over and check on her. Aww. And then we have a birthday celebration at one of the smaller beer breweries here in town.
Happy days.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, a full day.
A full day. I know. I'm going to be social today and put away my computer for a little while.
Not a bad thing always.
Always.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Nobody tells you when you start your own business that you have to work like 30 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Exactly. No vacation.
I know. Even on vacation, I'm sitting on the dock in my friend's lake cottage last week, answering my phone, booking people onto shuttles and stuff. So, it happens.
Peter, you're also going to head out?
I'm going to head out, yes. I'm going to head out with the two dogs. It's Saturday, so Vera's free today. So we're going to take maybe a little flask of coffee down to the lake and have a little coffee at the lake because we can.
Yeah,
exactly. You can. You are working, and it doesn't feel like
and
I feel like I'm in the same position. It's
perfect. If we go down to the far beach, I will be able to take Cleo off lead, and we can hopefully continue our good work with her recall because it was very, very poor. It just didn't exist. Basically, not poor. There was no recall, and the last couple of times it very much improved, and only. Awesome. And with no treats in the pockets, so we're happy about that. So that's the day. That's the day.
That sounds like an excellent Saturday to me.
Yeah, lots of furry friends.
Furry friends and gardening. I found a new flower place and all these plants for 10Q. They're all outside and 10Q plants, and we've got loads of pots in the garden and loads of good dirt. So I'm gardening today.
God, I miss gardening. I need a yard again. I miss it so much. Like I have all these plants here in my house, in my room. I basically turned my little room into a jungle, but it's not enough. I need more.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, unfortunately, with cats in the house, your plants don't always last.
Well,
right.
That's it.
I need to check, make sure they're non-toxic because most of the time they sort of get nibbled on at night.
Maybe some.
Or that they don't taste good, maybe.
Have you ever tried catnip on your cats?
Oh, yeah. Mo, he's an addict.
Is it?
And he gets very feisty. If anyone comes over while he's enjoying his catnip, he's like, don't touch me.
Is that a special plant?
It is a special plant.
It is. So cats have a very strong olfactory response to catnip. So it's grown fresh and then dried, and you sort of rub it in your fingers and sprinkle it on the ground or something. They're very sensitive to the scent of it, and it gives them a little feeling of euphoria.
Wow.
After a few minutes, that wears off, and then they need to sort of reset, and they come back a few minutes later for it. Yeah. So it just makes them sort of like happy and joyous, and they roll around in it and look filthy and get a little feisty, but then they're okay.
Oh, that's so interesting. I did not know that existed. I'm going to Google that now.
Yeah, it's really funny.
And can you buy it here, do you know, or have you seen it here?
I have not found it in many places. I've only seen it sold with cat toys in a little packet. So I normally, when I go back to the States and go shopping to bring stuff back, it's usually half cat stuff, like treats.
So you're like smuggling some catnip across the border.
Yeah.
Smuggling catnip.
They're like, what's this green leafy substance in your luggage here?
I think I saw someone selling some on one of the Antigua groups one time, selling it, fresh to grow. So I'd like to try to grow it.
Yes, I did. I bought some seeds and I planted them in this nice big pot that I have in my little patio area. But that's the same pot that my little girl Lulu likes to use for the toilet instead of the litter box that's 10 meters that way. So, yeah.
Maybe you should switch the locations of the two objects.
I know, right?
Well, Valerie, I don't want to steal more of your kitty time because that little kitty probably wants to be checked on. Thank you so much for taking the time to coming on our podcast.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
If there's anyone listening who would like to explore Guatemala with a little bit of hand-holding, or maybe is even considering moving there, where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me direct on my website at www.dosouthtravels.com. And I also have Instagram with some great photos and Facebook.
Okay, I'll put the 3 in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, it was so nice catching up with you guys.
You too. Nice to meet you too, Peter.
And yourself. Nice to meet you, Valerie.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Adios.